D'abord, j'aimerais remercier tout le monde pour être venu ce soir. Vous êtes nombreux. J'ai compris qu'on est en compétition avec l'ambassade de France qui, ce soir, offre à certains Canadiens distingués la Légion d'honneur. Donc, je suis ravi de voir tant de personnes ici ce soir et de remercier Margaret surtout parce que je pense que c'est elle, en fait, qui attire pas mal de personnes. Alors, merci, Margaret, pour être venue ce soir. I'd also like to thank Khalil Sharif and the Aga Khan Foundation Canada and his staff for partnering with the North-South Institute for the launch of our Canadian Development Report. These beautiful surroundings, as you can all see, and the wonderful reception both before and afterwards are all courtesy of the Aga Khan Foundation Canada. And they're both a gracious host and a neighbor of ours, as well as a supporter and sometime collaborator, equally concerned as us with the need to inform both the Canadian public and its policymakers of the newly emerging development challenges which we're facing in a very rapidly globalizing world. And some of these challenges, of course, we tried to address in our June conference on which this report is based. Again, Margaret, thank you for setting the stage with your presentation. It was a very relevant and thought-provoking set of comments and highly significant, especially coming as it does from the president of CEDA. I'd also, let me introduce the other speakers for this evening, and I'll be brief because you do have their bios on your chairs, and we are a bit behind schedule. I'll introduce them, and then we'll have a session during which you, members of the audience, can address questions and comments to all four of the speakers, including Margaret. And I'll attempt to moderate that exchange, for which I think in the program we've allowed about 45 minutes, but I think we'll probably reduce that to about half an hour given the lateness of the program at this point. I'd like to, our second speaker after me is Professor Jacqueline Best from the University of Ottawa. As I said, her bio is hopefully in your hands. And then Shannon Kinder-Ney from the Institute, one of our bright young researchers who is a graduate of the Norman Paterson School of International Affairs, Canada's equivalent, I think, of the Kennedy School. Sorry to offend people from the University of Ottawa or elsewhere, but and then subsequently Aniket Bhushan, who will present the Canadian International Development Platform, to which Margaret referred, and which we think is a very innovative and interesting development. Finally, I'd like to thank, amongst the team that helped prepare this, Kate Higgins, who is one of our newer researchers who joined us last year from ODI in the UK and previously Oxford University. Kate is an Australian who is helping us enormously as we go forward. I'd like to thank also Heini Besada, Karine Leblanc, Suzanne Rose, Diane Pichette, and Dina Shadid for their efforts, their tireless efforts, I might say, around the writing and the launch of this report. I do think that the theme of this year's report, as Margaret alluded to, is both timely and, of course, important, as evidenced in part, I guess, by the impressive turnout for this evening's event. As I said, obviously having Margaret here helped. And last but not least, I'd like to express our sincere gratitude to CEDA, ACTI, for the support they've given us financially for this report and for the conference, to CRDI, the IDRC, and I don't know if David is here, but I see Ann Weston here, and that continued support, and of course to Khalil and the Aga Khan Foundation. They were, all three organizations, very generous in supporting it. Now, there's a number of other organizations which have made significant financial contributions, and they're listed. They're too numerous to go through in detail, but they're listed somewhere here on a board, I think at the back there, thank you, Liz, of the room, and you can see who they are and the importance of their contributions to us. Finally, now, before giving the floor to Jacqueline, Let me conclude my remarks by quoting from a recent op-ed I wrote for the Huffington Post, which was entitled, What 2012 Can Learn from 2011. I think it serves to contextualize the subject matter of this year's report. And I stated in that piece that governments, and I quote, need to be basing public policy on solid research into what measures will produce desired outcomes in increasingly complex and globalized environments. At the same time, governments need to recognize that their playing field is less and less a national one, and that in an increasingly interlinked world, the strategies for achieving desired outcomes must include multinational approaches which respond to the needs of multiple actors. That means that increasingly public policy research of the kind that we're doing at NSI, for example, but also other institutes, and indeed public policy itself needs to be looking forward 10, 20 years or more, beyond just, and I see we have a member of parliament here, beyond just the next electoral cycle, anticipating both new threats and opportunities. It also means taking into account the collective concerns of the key global stakeholders, the emerging economies, the low-income countries, many of which are fragile, and potential threats to regional and global stability, as well as the so-called developed economies. And I close the quote. I believe that with this report, we are seeking to do just that by highlighting the importance of effective multilateralism in dealing with the increasingly complex policy environment in which we live today. So with that, I'll ask Jacqueline to take the floor, and she's going to talk to us about one very important aspect of multilateralism, specifically the role of the international financial institutions.